Lovely. Good. Lovely to meet you all. So I'm going to talk today about mindfulness, and in particular, mindfulness for high performance. Why mindfulness makes a difference in organizations today. So I come to this myself from a Buddhist background. In about 1974, I was introduced to mindfulness in Buddhist context just at the end of my university degree. I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life, and I spent the rest of my adult life doing that. So I lived pretty much full-time in Buddhist contexts, in urban meditation centers, rural retreat centers, doing that sort of thing. I had a little passage of time as an entrepreneur. I set up a fair trade company with a few other Buddhists. It came to be quite successful, so in time it had sales of about 10 million sterling, and we gave away £1 million a year to worthy causes, but it turned out not to be what I wanted to do with my life. And so I gave the company, my shareholding, to a trust and got on with doing what I wanted to do, which was meditating, studying, writing, doing that kind of thing. And I was very happy doing that for a while, and then I decided I needed to make a change. So around about 2002, I'd come to the conclusion that I wanted to find a way of engaging with the wider culture, because in the Buddhist context, I felt there were Buddhists talking to Buddhists about Buddhism, and it was all a bit self-enclosed. We had these fabulous methodologies, but they weren't getting out there. So I looked around and I found, to my great good fortune, a master's program in the clinical applications of mindfulness that was just being set up at Bangor University in Wales. And I joined that program in the School of Psychology at Bangor eventually, and I was the first graduate, so the world's first master of mindfulness. I say that to my wife, she says, oh yeah. I don't know if you know, but mindfulness is now being prescribed on the NHS. It's been shown in a number of large-scale randomized control trials to more than halve relapse into depression, for example, for people who are prone to relapsing depression, and to bring about a range of other benefits, many of which I'll talk about in the short time that we have together. So there are ways of working with your mind and your mental states that are now being substantially researched, and it's all very exciting, and we'll find out more about that. Let's begin with these guys. So here we have some US Marines, let's call them. And imagine yourself in this scenario. You're a US Marine on checkpoint duty somewhere in, say, Iraq, and a carload of women and children comes driving towards you at high speed without stopping. And in that tiny moment, you've got to make a decision. And the decision you make might have life or death consequences for the people in the car. It might have life or death consequences for yourself and your buddies. It might have massive international diplomatic and political ramifications. And you're just one person needing to make a decision. A tough call. And the decision that you make is going to depend, the quality of the decision you make is going to depend in large part in that moment on the quality of your working memory capacity. So working memory is a set of related brain functions that acts a bit like the brain's RAM. It's like the RAM of a computer. It's very short term, and it's very rapidly refreshed. So even as I'm speaking to you now, the sounds I'm making are being assembled into words. And the words are being assembled into sentences, and the sentences get assembled into meaning. All this is happening in the kind of whiteboard of working memory, very small space. And there it gets shunted off for later processing. So once you've got a sense of the meaning of what's going on, working memory will deliver that, and then it's refreshed. So you get the sense of it. Very, very short term. And it's really important for effective emotion regulation, decision-making, and cognitive control. So there's this tiny, tiny space of memory, just 7, 8, 9 bits of information big, and you need to have that in good shape, because when it's in good shape, you're able to regulate your emotions effectively, you're able to make good decisions, and you can be innovative, creative, and so on. The trouble is that working memory is degraded by stress. So when you're sitting at your desk or workstation at the end of a really, really busy day, there's just been tons of incoming, it's been an uphill struggle all day, phone calls, back-to-back meetings, emails, and a colleague comes to you at the end of the day and says, that project we're working on together, I need a decision from you right now. And you just want to go, get out my face, leave me alone, you're about to say something really rude and inappropriate, you just catch yourself in time. And what's going on here is that the demands of the day, the stresses of the day have degraded your working memory capacity. So you're no longer quite up to your usual pitch. You're a bit frazzled, effectively you're frazzled. So you could imagine that if you're on checkpoint duty, holding a high-powered rifle, you don't want people in that kind of state. You don't want them to be frazzled. And yet, they're subject to massive stressors and challenges. So for that reason, the Marines instituted a trial with a cohort of Marines. And they gave one part of the cohort an 8-week mindfulness training, and the other half got it later. And what they found was that those Marines who did more than 12 minutes of mindfulness practice a day, even though the training was being delivered to them in high stress conditions in the 2 months before deployment to the battlefield, which is a very stressful time. Those who did the training and did more than 12 minutes of formal mindfulness practice each day had an increase in their working memory capacity from before to after. Those who didn't do the training or did less than 12 minutes of home practice every day had a decrease in their working memory capacity. The stressors of the period decreased their working memory capacity. And so you start to see the Marines beginning to offer this kind of training more widely. And it's for reasons like that people like myself stand in places like this talking about this stuff today, because we know that it makes a difference. We know that it makes a difference. And some of the difference that it makes is really important. So this is how we look at working memory. It's just an example, really. This isn't a scientific test. If people are interested in a really rigorous scientific test of their own working memory capacity, I can share a link later. But name the colors and shapes as quick as you can. Okay, so what you see what's happening here is you get a red circle, and then you get noise, and then you get a blue square, and then you get noise. And I'm talking, and that's more noise. So the capacity to actually retain relevant information online in the face of noise, in the face of distraction, is a test of your working memory capacity. You can see how important it is these days, because boy, do we have noise in our lives. Endless distraction. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Don't try and complete it. Drive you nuts. So this is something that was said by one of the Marines. This guy's a medic who did the training. He says, during my previous deployment, especially after doing multiple missions and being up late, when I'd go out on missions, I'd be so jittery, so fragmented, so ready to pull the trigger, so ready to kill. Without any hesitation, I was ready to go, but so amped that there was no control. And thank God, nothing happened. Whereas this time I was focused, I was watching things, I was much more attentive to people who were around me and what they were doing. Before, it was just a blur. So the 8 weeks of mindfulness training made a real difference to this guy's life. And you can begin to see, I think, some of the kind of impact it can have for some of us. So what is mindfulness? We speak of it as a quality of awareness. It's the awareness that comes from paying attention. paying attention, right? Just this, paying attention. And that sounds simple enough, but it turns out that we're not particularly good at it. In fact, goldfish may turn out to be a bit better than we are. Microsoft, in 2000, I think it was it 2012? Anyway, recently, Microsoft measured the average adult attention span in the developed world and came to the conclusion at that point that it was 12 seconds. Then they remeasured it last year and it was down to 8 seconds. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So our attention span, which was never all that good, is shrinking. So mindfulness training helps you to pay attention. Even as I'm speaking now, people's attention is wandering. You know, we go back and we'll say to people, yeah, I heard this talk on mindfulness and it was interesting or it was boring or whatever you think, that's fine. But you know, you tell the story about what happened. What you don't say is what really happened was that I went to this talk about mindfulness and I sat in the audience and then I thought about whether I should pick up my dry cleaning on the way back, whether I could leave it for another week, and then I listened to the guy for another moment or two, and then I thought about that project that I've got going at work and something about that, and then I came back to listening to this guy talk about mindfulness. I listened to him for a little bit and then I thought a bit more about that holiday that I really do need to book this year if we're going to get away, because gosh, we just keep on leaving it to the last minute. And then I came back and listened to the guy a bit more, and it doesn't work like that, does it? But that's actually what's going on. It's going on for all of us. Our attention wanders. So mindfulness is about paying attention on purpose, choosing to pay attention, choosing where your attention goes, being a little bit more choiceful, a little bit more purposive about it, and keeping your attention in the present moment. An awful lot of the time we're leaning into the future, slightly anxious. Have I got all my ducks lined up? Is everything going to be okay? You know, rehearsing our to-do list over and over again, rehearsing important project plans, thinking about stuff to come, just leaning into the future over and over and over again. Or we're regretful about the past. If only that. I wish they had, I had, she had, whatever. So leaning into the future with slight anxiety and anticipation very often, and leaning into the past with regret, concern. Rarely, simply right here, right now, just with this, just here. So mindfulness is a way of paying attention on purpose and in the present moment. And when we're mindful, we're non-judgmental. And by that I don't mean that we don't make discriminations, we don't figure what's right from what's wrong, what's appropriate from what's inappropriate. But think about what we mean when we speak about a person being very judgmental. There's that sort of hypercritical attitude, that constantly cutting attitude, that always undermining attitude, that's often turned towards ourselves, turned towards others, turned towards the environment and the system. The sense that things aren't quite good enough, I'm not quite good enough, they're not quite good enough, it's not quite what it should be, it's not quite up to the mark, I'm not quite up to the mark, they're not quite up to the mark. When we're mindful, we allow things to be as they are a bit more, just a bit less judgmental. I often think that there are two dimensions to this. There's a kind of wisdom dimension and there's a kind of compassion dimension. With the wisdom dimension, we allow what is the case to be the case. This moment's been delivered by history. Here it is. It is what it is. Couldn't be anything other than this. Just this moment, this comes from the past, and here it is. And you know what? It is what it is. And when you can allow things to be what they are, allow what is the case to be the case, then you begin to get some choice. Then you can begin to go, here it is, now what do I do? How am I going to be with this? Where am I going to go with this? What do I do from here? If you can't allow what is the case to be the case, if you're going, they shouldn't, it shouldn't, I shouldn't, I wish it wasn't, then there's not much choice. You're already stuck. So there's that side, the kind of wisdom side, just letting what's here be what's here. And then there's a kind of compassion side, which is just bringing a bit more kindness, a bit more allowing, a bit more understanding to what's shown up. It is what it is. So paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally is something that we can train ourselves in. We can get a little bit more of this stuff going. And that's life-changing, as you have all kinds of data to show how life-changing this is in all sorts of ways. It's magic. So this is another reason why I'm here. The science. This is what's enabled, this stuff to come out of the monasteries where it lived for 2,500 years and begin to interact with this particular kind of contemporary world. When I first started, practicing way back over there somewhere, there was no science done. No one knew what was going on. We just thought it worked. When I started studying it academically, that year there were 44 peer-reviewed papers published. I was thrilled. I thought, this is magnificent. 44 papers. This is real scientists taking a real interest, producing real data. This is really exciting. And we could read those 44 papers more or less, or at least skim them. We had a sense of what was out there. Now, over here somewhere, they're coming out at the rate of more than 50 a month. So it's a massive explosion. And what's really exciting is that now the neuroscientists have come to be interested, and they're turning out really great data. So we're beginning to learn that with just 8 weeks of mindfulness training, there are strong correlations between that and increased brain grey matter density in areas connected with sustained attention, emotion regulation, perspective taking. We get the sense that it can increase working memory capacity. That's beginning to be fairly undisputed. That it increases left prefrontal activation, reduces right prefrontal activation. And left and right prefrontal are bilaterally activated. More left is more approach oriented, more right is more avoidance oriented. So when you're more left activated, more approach oriented, you're more open, curious, kind, interested, creative. So all kinds of really interesting changes show up around just 2 months of mindfulness training. Very good news. So, this is all a bit theoretical, isn't it? Shall we do a practice, do a mindfulness practice? You might have heard about this stuff. Eating a raisin mindfully. Yeah. Shall we do it? Would people be up for it? I could lead us in a mindful eating meditation. So it means putting down your drinks and stuff. You could slip them on the floor. We'll pass some raisins around. So I'm going to blank the screen because... Yes. 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 Okay, so if we could treat this as a kind of meditation, that would be really great. People up for that? Lovely. To begin with, just settling into yourself and letting your raisin rest on your palm. And getting a sense of what it feels like on the palm, that sense of touch. So touch, pressure, contact, very faint sensation. Quite possibly hardly any sensation, maybe even no sensation, doesn't matter. But just noticing what's here. So you might notice the sense of touch where the raisin rests on your palm right now. Maybe. You might get that. Okay, and you may get a sense of warmth or coolness. You may notice warmth or coolness, maybe there. And then you might be aware of the pattern of colour and shape that the raisin makes as it rests on your palm. So just beginning to explore it visually, just looking and seeing colours, shapes. The variety of colours in the raisin and the variety of colours in your palm. There may be more colours than you'd anticipate. Just colours and shapes. Maybe. The colour of shadows. What's the colour of shadows right now in this light? Then picking the raisin up between the thumb and the forefinger and getting a sense of what it feels like on the outside. Getting a sense of its exterior texture, what it feels like. Any roughness, any stickiness, any graininess, ridginess. This raisin, this moment. Maybe giving it a very slight squeeze and getting a sense of what it feels like on the inside, which may be different to what it feels like on the outside. Moving it to somewhere you can really focus on it and really beginning to look. This little world, this little landscape in miniature with its ridges and its valleys, its highlights and shadows. Seeing how it changes as it moves in the light, how facets appear and disappear. This little world. Now moving it very slowly towards your mouth. You may notice a change in the mouth as it begins to approach. And as it passes by your nose, you may be aware of some fragrance. You may want to explore that for a moment. Popping it into your mouth and letting it rest on your tongue. Noticing any faint flavor that may be there or maybe not. Noticing the sense of touch on the tongue, which is different to touch in the palm and different to touch at the fingers. Maybe rolling it against the roof of the mouth and getting a sense of touch there, which is different to the tongue. Noticing any urges, any impulses. Just noticing. Moving it now to between your back teeth and letting it just rest between your back teeth. Again, just noticing any urges, any impulses. When you're ready, taking a single bite, just one bite, and then another bite. And another, and another. And now aware of sound and texture, flavor and change, just chewing. Sound, texture, flavor, and change. Sound, texture, flavor, and change. Chewing and chewing. Chewing until there's almost nothing left to chew. And then when there is almost nothing left to chew, in your own time just swallowing and tracking the raisin as it goes down your throat until you lose sight of it altogether. So you're noticing that when it's sitting on the palm and you're not actually feeling very much sensation, the mind just wanders off. But then at different times suddenly more interesting stuff turns up and you start to really pay attention to it. And then when it gets into the mouth, you're noticing this urge to eat, to bite. Is that urge something that you're familiar with at all? Or?
Well, I think I wasn't as familiar as it.
Yeah.
It actually was the first time.
Exactly. What really interests me is this business, because I think we very rarely experience our urges. Normally the urge is just fused to the behavior. You know, a raisin hits your mouth and you bite and boom, gone. You don't notice the urge to do that. the impulse to do it. But here we notice the impulse. But also then you start to feel sorry for the raisin because you've got this relationship going with it. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Isn't that interesting? And I hear this quite a bit. I thought I didn't like raisins. It turned out actually that was really nice. I sometimes hear the opposite as well. I sometimes hear, I love raisins. I was really looking forward to that one. And then it turned out I don't like it. So isn't it interesting that we come to these kinds of experiences with a kind of preconception one way or another. But when we actually pay attention to what we're really experiencing, then we notice what this thing's actually like. And it may turn out to be quite different. Thank you very much for that. Isn't that interesting? So you notice that although I didn't give any instruction to really ground yourself, to get your feet onto the ground, you're starting to feel your feet on the ground. You're feeling a bit more fully in your body, I guess, a bit more embodied and I'd imagine present. Is that? Yeah. So when you pay attention to sensation and we come away from the stuff going on in thinking and planning and imagining, then we can get more present, right here, right now, this body in this place. Really valuable for being present. If you're going to, communicate with somebody or talk to a group or something like that, to just turn up and be present. Lovely, thank you. Absolutely. So you're noticing that when there's not an awful lot of sensation, the mind can easily wander, but when there's a bit more sensation, the mind can begin to settle and stabilize a little bit. And you're also noticing that actually there's a whole story to this raisin. And this is something we don't ordinarily pay attention to, don't even notice. We can eat by the handful, waste them by the handful, without really giving them any regard. Yeah, thank you. One last point, if anyone has it.
I guess I experienced, it was the sound, which might surprise me. I had the urge to bite, when I managed to control that urge to bite. It was that moment when I first bit into it, I was surprised. Even though it wasn't a physical sound outwardly, I could feel the internal sound and the dialogue that I was having with the noise of chewing.
Yes.
So it was quite a high sensation of trying to understand what moisture sounds like when I was biting into it.
Yeah. So you're noticing two things there, I guess. One is you're noticing the actual physical sound of eating. I mean, how many people ordinarily think that raisins make a noise when you eat them? One person out of the whole group. And the other one is you're actually beginning to engage with that and to think about it. And so on, so on, so on. So what we're noticing here is that when we pay attention to something as simple as a single raisin, a whole bunch of stuff turns up that we didn't think was present, that we wouldn't have known was present. Who'd have known that a raisin tastes like this, looks like this, feels like this, sounds like this, etc., etc., etc. We're discovering all this stuff. We're discovering it because we're paying attention. Now, if there's that much in a single raisin which we were previously unaware of, what else are we missing? It's an interesting question. What else are we missing? And some of what we're missing is kind of important. Some of what we're missing could, for example, really lift our day and increase our levels of well-being. Now, Dale was talking about, noticing people on the underground rather than just doing this journey on automatic pilot. Noticing that there are all these wonderful human beings that you could actually engage with. For example, there's so much that we can notice that can lift our level of well-being. That feeling of sunshine on our skin in the morning as we step out of the front door, that can really give us a boost, but we miss it because by the time we hit the front door, we're doing our to-do list for the 5th time and 6th time, etc., etc. So there's stuff that we're missing that could really enhance our well-being. Some of what we're missing is a bit mission critical, in a way. That tone of voice that your kid's using over breakfast that says they're being bullied at school and don't know how to talk about it at home, but we miss it because we're doing family breakfast on automatic pilot. Or that glance in a colleague's eye as you come into work in the morning and say hi that says there's something really important going on in their lives and they wish they could talk about it to someone, but you miss it because you're just saying hi to your colleague on automatic pilot. Or that moment in a negotiation where things might just have gone this way rather than that way, but you miss it because this is a negotiation you've done hundreds of times on automatic pilot. You just do it. So automaticity turns out to kind of shape our lives a great deal, and it's something that we do an enormous amount of. We spend a lot of our time on automatic pilot. How many people have driven 60 miles down a motorway and gone, how did I get here? Yeah, we've all done it. Not only have we done it, everyone else out there is doing it at the same time. So you're a good citizen. 72 miles an hour just before the cops get interested down the centre lane. Other people in the right-hand lane doing 80, 90, 100, 120 miles an hour. Left-hand lane, trucks doing 60 miles an hour, nose to tail. Slightest twitch in either direction and you cause complete mayhem, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because we're really, really good at doing stuff on automatic. And we can engage even in these lethal activities on automatic. When you first started to drive a car, you couldn't do that. You know, where's the clutch? Where's the brake? Where's the accelerator? Someone says to you, lovely weather today. Shut up, I'm trying to concentrate. But soon you can, automate the process and you can drive 60 miles at 70 odd miles an hour while thinking about a big project at work and wondering whether, if you won the lottery, whether you'd show up again the next morning, and all these other things that pass through people's minds. So there's a big upside to automatic. It frees resources, and there's a big downside. And the downside is that we miss stuff, and the downside is that we end up not really being alive. Because if our lives are, after all, just one moment of experience followed by another moment of experience followed by another moment of experience and then another one, and then we die, well, it would be nice to have some of those moments. It would be great to show up for some of our lives, to actually be there for some of this living, rather than just be doing our to-do list for the umpteenth time that day in this slightly automatic way that often takes over. So mindfulness training is about learning how to step out of automatic and into your life just a bit more frequently, how to show up a bit, to be more present, to be more there, to show up for other people, to show up for the people you care for, to show up for your own people at work, to show up for the job from time to time, to show up for yourself, for your life, to turn up and be present. And it's not, it's not rocket science. This stuff that I'm talking, we all did that raisin thing pretty much, if we cared to. We just do it. It's not difficult. You just do it. So it's really, really simple. It's really, really simple. The trouble is it's not easy. And it's not easy because we've got long habits of just parking more and more of our lives onto automatic. So we've got long habits of slipping out of mindfulness and into just another automatic thing. And this is something that we can train ourselves to do less frequently, to show up a bit more often. And there are ways of working with the attention systematically to build that capacity, to show up more frequently. Cool. Any thoughts or questions on any of that before I move on? Good. Let's move on. I would love, if I can work out how to put the slides back on. I would love to share one of these methodologies, a way of working with your attention. Would people be up for that?
Yes.
So these guys, I've just turned them off again. These guys are a bunch of leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos last year doing a meditation, and we'll just do it the same way they're doing it. Why I show this slide is because this is typical of the work I do in organizations. We'll just sit around in chairs and meditate. You get these sort of picture editors' fantasies about meditation with people in leotards levitating over palm-fringed beaches and all that sort of stuff. This is reality, folks. So let's join the real world and do some meditation. We're in the real world. Let's do some meditation in the real world. So what we're going to do what we're going to do is just follow the breath. We're just going to allow our attention to rest with the breath, with each in-breath and each out-breath. Really, really, really simple. Really, really, really simple. Totally not rocket science. Incredibly easy. Simple. May not be easy, we'll see. So we begin by just arriving in the body, as the gentleman was saying earlier, just noticing feet in contact with floor. These feet, this floor, this moment. And just beginning to bring a warm, kindly curiosity to what you find where your feet meet the floor. And then this body in contact with this seat. What sensations are here? Noticing this body on this seat. Touch, pressure, contact. And you could let your eyes close or leave them open, whatever works for you. If you're leaving your eyes open, just letting your gaze be unfocused, just softened. Becoming aware that you're breathing, aware that each out-breath is followed by an in-breath, and each in-breath is followed by an out-breath. Your body knows how to do this, it knows how it wants to breathe, so just letting the body breathe and moving attention to the breath, each in-breath and each out-breath. Just following the breath. Now, when the mind wanders, it's not a mistake, it's not a fault. Minds wander. It's just what they do. So when you notice that the mind has wandered, just seeing where it went perhaps, and then gently, kindly drawing the attention back to the breath. Each in-breath, each out-breath. And the attention may slip off again. And if you notice that, then just again, gently, kindly, drawing the attention back to the breath. Just following the breath. Just breathing. We'll begin to bring this very short practice to a close now. Taking your time, there's no rush. When you're ready, in your own time, opening your eyes, coming to me. Just taking your time. So again, I'd be very interested to hear what kind of experiences showed up doing that practice. Lovely. So you discovered that it was easier to breathe from the stomach than from the chest, and you saw how you were breathing. Really connected.
The eyes were focused inside.
Right, so you were really noticing, watching the process of your self-breathing. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, yeah.
Also being conscious of your mind wandering and trying to keep it in check.
So you're noticing the mind wandering off and you bring it back, it wanders off and you bring it back. Yeah. Thank you, yeah. Yes, you're noticing the way the mind wanders off, and it was wandering quite a bit towards the end, and then we brought it to a close and you thought, oh, thank you. And yeah, sensation of relaxation and not being here, just really relaxing and just being somewhere else. Who knows where? In this part of the world. Lovely, thank you. Lovely observation there. That noticing this tendency we might have to punish ourselves when we don't get it right, and letting us off the hook. Just, yeah, thank you. So you begin to break the experience down a bit, noticing different factors. You're noticing the temperature of the in-breath, the temperature of the out-breath, and seeing the different components of your breath, timing and so on. And that's helping your attention to really anchor there. So that curiosity and interest in what this experience is like right now is beginning to help you to anchor your experience in the present moment. Right, so you're noticing that you could ground into your own body, but you're also beginning to become aware of the sound space that we're in, and that's beginning to tune up a bit more. So that sort of sensory part of your experiencing is getting to be more attuned. Thank you very much. Yeah. Notice this. It's easy to think that if I give an instruction, follow the breath, that you need to keep your attention in this bandwidth. And that if you keep it in this bandwidth, you're doing it right, and when it moves outside that bandwidth, then you're doing it wrong. But this is what actually happens. Everyone's attention goes off on a journey. It's just not right, it's not wrong, it's what actually happens. It happens for everyone. So we're with the breath for 2 breaths, 3 breaths, and then we forget to pay attention to the breath, and our attention gets dragged elsewhere, and then we remember to pay attention to the breath, and we bring the attention back, and we're with the breath for 2 breaths, 3 breaths, 4 breaths, maybe 4 breaths, gosh. And then we forget to pay attention to the breath, and our attention goes off, and then we remember, and then we forget, and we remember and forget, and so on. So we remember and forget to pay attention to the breath. We also remember and forget our intention. We set out with the intention of meditating, but very soon we forget our intention to meditate, and we replace that with the intention to do some planning. So we sit here planning and planning and planning and planning, and then we remember the intention to meditate, and we come back. And we follow the breath for another few breaths, and then we forget the intention to meditate. Instead we do some dreaming, and we do some dreaming and dreaming and dreaming, and then we remember our intention to meditate, and we come back. So we forget and remember around intention as well. And then we forget and remember around our attitude. So we're trying to do this with an attitude of kindness, curiosity, openness, interest. But it's easy very quickly, as some people notice, to begin to punish ourselves, to give ourselves a hard time. We can actually say, hey, come on, this isn't rocket science. You should be able to do this now. This isn't difficult. Come on, get with the program. And you start to give yourself a hard time for not being better at this. And then you remember the attitude and you come back to it. So over and again you can forget and remember those attitudinal qualities of openness, kindness, curiosity, interest, and so on. And here's the good thing. Every time we forget is an opportunity to remember, and every time we remember, it's as if we're beginning to lay down tiny deposits in the neural pathways connected with sustained attention, sustained intention, and a set of desirable attitudes. And if you do that just, 20 times, say in the course of 5 minutes here, it's neither here nor there. You go home and it's gone. But if you were to do that 10,000 times, taking up a regular mindfulness practice for a couple of months, maybe doing, say, 12 or more minutes of formal meditation every day, then you begin to change things. Then you begin to rewire the brain. You begin to actually develop a greater capacity for sustained attention, a greater capacity for sustained intention, and you begin to develop some of these attitudinal qualities we've been talking about. So I think that may be a part of how this stuff has its effects. Maybe. It's a kind of brain training in some ways. There may be more to it than this, but that's at least a part of it. I just want to finish with this slide because this one's really, really important. Our emotions are contagious. These are the three primary emotion regulation systems according to some theorists. Some people think it works like this. And this is, the reward-seeking system driven by dopamine. It's the stuff that gets us out of bed in the morning, that gets us wanting to do well, to achieve, to thrive. At its most primitive, it's the urge to mate, procreate, and provide for our family. That's its sort of evolutionary basis, perhaps. So there's, it's what gets us wanting to do well at work. The blue system. The red system is the threat-focused, safety-seeking system. You know about this stuff, fight, flight, freeze stuff. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. It's the system that gets us feeling anxious, under threat. And there's the calm and connect system here. Serotonin, oxytocin, vasopressin are some of the players in this system. The green system that helps us to calm down and connect with other people. Now, my main contention here is that actually we can do our blue reward-seeking stuff, our striving and going on, from the green zone. We don't have to do it from the red zone. It doesn't have to be like that. We can do it from here. And here's the really important thing. Leaders who lead from this space spread anxiety through their teams. And anxiety turns out to disable people. It turns out to actually reduce their effectiveness, not to increase it. Leaders who lead from this place get their people connected. They enable higher performance in their people. They enable creativity. They enable trust. So you can do your blue reward-seeking stuff from this place. You don't need to do it from that place. Because let's think about how these systems came to be laid down over millions of years of evolution. 50,000 years ago, when we're out in the forests of Britain, say, foraging and hunting, leaving that small clearing where you might have lived with the immediate members of your family and going into the dangerous place, going away from the family space into the dangerous place because you had to do that for food. The blue stuff got you out there. And you're out there and suddenly you get this sniff that there might be a bear behind that tree. So what happens? Well, immediately this system kicks off big style and you freeze, you stop digesting, your muscle groups tighten, you get ready to fight or run away, large muscle groups pump up with blood, ready to run, fight, that's what you know how to do. Non-essential neural circuits shut down, you can't really fresh thinking, you can't think whether energy really equals mass multiplied by the speed of light squared. If there's a bear behind that rock, it's just fight, run, do the stuff you get very tunnel visioned, you get very threat focused. You can't think creatively, you can't come up with anything new right there, you can only rehearse the old stuff you know how to do, fight, run. Your digestion's gone to pieces, all kinds of bad things are happening here. Cortisol's a great activator. It gets you ready to respond quickly, but it's also thickening, and it thickens your blood in case you're bitten or bruised, but it's undermining your immune system. Not that it matters if there's a bear behind that rock. You get flu next week, that's fine. That means you've survived. So all that's going on. Then you get away from the bear, you institute one of your fight, flight, freeze maneuvers, and you escape from the bear, and you go back to the family campfire where people are calm, you're calming, you're connected with people, your heart rate's coming down under the influence of vasopressin, serotonin's making everyone feel good, oxytocin's helping everyone to bond, people are really creative. They're making up new songs and dances about your legendary escape from the bear. You're moving into history and into myth, and it's really wonderful and it's great. So in this place, everyone's really, really creative and doing good stuff. So that's fine. 50,000 years ago, it helps us to escape bears. But you're sitting at your desk and you suddenly get an email from a colleague saying they can't deliver on the project they promised they'd deliver on, and suddenly, boof! This whole system kicks off and your musculoskeletal system tightens just in case you need to fight or run. Non-essential neural circuits shut down so you can't think straight. Your blood thickens just in case someone comes in and bites you or bruises you. Your immune system's being shredded. Your heart rate's going through the roof. It's terrible. It's the exact opposite of helpful. So what's going on here is that we're having to respond. We inevitably respond to the circumstances we find ourselves in the modern workplace with the kit that came from evolution. We've only had smartphones for 5 or 6 years. Evolution really hasn't had time to catch up with this. So we're still doing the stuff we did 50,000 years ago. We're still doing it, and often it's not appropriate. So one of the promises of mindfulness training is that it helps us to manage this system better. It helps us to notice that tensing and then to be able to institute a response, to calm down, to breathe, ease, choose another response, to respond mindfully rather than react mindlessly. I won't go too much into the pressure performance curve. People are probably familiar with it, I imagine. That as the demands on us increase, so our capacity to respond increases, and that's great here, but beyond a certain point, here lives cancer, heart disease, diabetes, musculoskeletal disorders, sleep disorders, blah, blah, blah. In this place, we're using caffeine to get us going, alcohol to bring us down, painkillers to deal with the after effects. Not always managing it very well. So this is a better place to live over here, really at peak, doing well. And here we're deluded. We think we're doing great, but we're not. We say to ourselves we're fine, but we're not. We're actually up here, but actually we're down here. That's the reality. So learning how to manage this is really important, and mindfulness is about helping you to get up to peak and then how to deal with things when you start to feel yourself going down again. Having some things you can institute to help yourself manage that better. And I'd like to share a single 1-minute meditation that can help in that process. Would people be interested? Okay, so now in order to do a single 1-minute meditation, it's really valuable to know how long a minute lasts. Who knows how long a minute lasts? In order to do that, I'm going to share a methodology. So what we'll do is we'll do a meditation together, just as we did earlier. But very soon into the process, I'll say start. And when I say start, begin to count at the end of the out-breath. So you breathe in, breathe out, count 1. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2. Breathe in, breathe out, count 3. I'm timing. And after a minute's passed, I'll say stop. And if you remember the number that you stopped on, that's how many breaths you take in a single 1-minute meditation. So that then, when you've got a difficult call coming up, you can just sit down and count your 6, 8, 10, 15, 20 breaths, whatever it is. Or after a difficult meeting, you want to get yourself back together, you can count your 6, 8, 10, 15, 20 breaths, whatever it is. Or if you're sitting waiting for the tube, just standing waiting for the tube, feeling a bit antsy, you can just calm, just count those breaths, get into a better space. Okay. So, again, just arriving and checking in with yourself. Feeling this moment, this breath. This body right here, right now. And just beginning to notice the in-breath. Notice the out-breath. let the attention begin to rest with the in-breath. Rest with the out-breath. And in a moment or two I'll say start, and when I do that, just beginning to count at the end of the out-breath. Start. So just counting at the end of the out-breath. And stop. Just remembering the number you stopped on. If you lost the plot there, you can always do this again with a smartphone. It's easy to do. So, you know how many breaths you take in a minute, and you can just sprinkle a few of these mindful minute meditations through your day. They can make a difference to your well-being. They're not going to help you to rewire your brain in the same way that longer periods of formal meditation do. It's different business, but they can really be helpful, make a difference. Okay, so next steps. Yay, my book. Buy lots of copies, give them to all your friends. That's the most important thing. No, it's an 8-week do-it-yourself mindfulness course with audio downloads if you want them. I do recommend doing that mindful minute a few times a day. It can make a difference. And if you want to do more practice, there's another set of audio downloads at that site, and do feel free to help yourself. There's no charge or anything there. Just if you fancy doing a 10-minute meditation or whatever it is, you can get some guidance from that. And I believe these slides, there'll be handouts from the slides coming around later in the week, so you don't need to necessarily write things down now, but feel free to. And thank you very much. Great. Thank you.